The Rise of Richard Nixon. In the late 1960s, the United States was a country full of tension and uncertainty. The Vietnam War was raging overseas. Millions of Americans were protesting in the streets. Young people were questioning the government, and the nation felt deeply divided. At this moment in history, one man was preparing to take the most powerful position in the world. His name was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon did not grow up in wealth or privilege. He was born in a small town in California in 1913. His father owned a small grocery store and gas station. Life for the Nixon family was not easy. Money was tight, and young Richard had to work hard from an early age. But what he lacked in wealth, he made up for with determination. He was known as a serious and disciplined student. He studied law and eventually became a lawyer. Soon, Nixon discovered something that fascinated him even more than law: politics. In the 1940s, Nixon ran for Congress and won. He quickly gained a reputation as a tough and aggressive politician. He believed strongly that America needed strong leadership, especially during the Cold War. By the 1950s, Nixon had already become a national political figure. He served as vice president under President Dwight Eisenhower for 8 years. During that time, he traveled around the world representing the United States. But Nixon wanted more. He wanted the presidency. In 1960, he ran for president against John F. Kennedy. It was one of the most famous elections in American history. The two candidates faced each other in the first televised presidential debates. Millions of Americans watched from their living rooms. Kennedy appeared confident and charismatic. Nixon looked tired and uncomfortable on television. In the end, Nixon lost the election by a very small margin. For many politicians, that kind of defeat would end their career, but not Richard Nixon. He disappeared from the national spotlight for several years. Many people thought his political career was finished. They were wrong. In 1968, America was facing one of the most chaotic years in its history. The Vietnam War was still ongoing. Civil rights protests were spreading across the country. Two major political leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy, had been assassinated. The country was desperate for stability. Nixon saw his opportunity. He ran for president again with a powerful message. He promised law and order. He told Americans he would restore peace and stability. His campaign strategy worked. Millions of voters believed he could bring the country back under control. And in November 1968, Richard Nixon won the election. He became the 37th President of the United States. When Nixon entered the White House, he wanted to prove that he could be a strong and successful leader. During his presidency, he achieved several major accomplishments. One of the most historic moments came in 1972. Nixon became the first American president to visit Communist China. For decades, the United States and China had no diplomatic relation, but Nixon believed opening relations with China could change the balance of global power. The visit shocked the world. It was one of the boldest diplomatic moves in modern history. Nixon also signed important arms control agreements with the Soviet Union. These agreements were designed to reduce the danger of nuclear war during the Cold War. Many political analysts believed Nixon was becoming one of the most influential presidents in modern American history. But behind the scenes, something much darker was happening. Nixon was deeply suspicious of his political enemies. He believed that many people in Washington were trying to destroy him. This fear slowly began to shape the way his administration operated. Inside the White House, a small group of loyal advisors began working secretly to protect the president. They called themselves the Plumbers. Their mission was simple: stop political leaks and gather information about Nixon's opponents. But their methods would soon cross the line between politics and crime. In June 1972, something happened that seemed small at first, but it would eventually become one of the biggest political scandals in American history. Late at night, 5 men were arrested inside a building in Washington, D.C. The building was called the Watergate Complex. Inside that building was the headquarters of the Democratic Party. The men had been caught breaking into the office. They were carrying cameras, recording equipment, and tools for wiretapping phones. At first, it looked like a simple burglary, but investigators soon began asking an important question: who sent them there? The answer to that question would shake the White House, and it would eventually lead to the downfall of a president. Because the Watergate break-in was not just a burglary, it was the beginning of a scandal that would change American politics forever. And at the center of it all was President Richard Nixon.